Hi everyone. I hope you can hear me all right. So today we are going to talk about the Azure AI stack and everything related to Azure AI. So I'll be covering the cognitive services as well as Azure ML, and then we'll have a few demos that we can talk about as well. So without further ado, let me just share my presentation and then we can get started. Cool. So we are going to talk about the Microsoft AI platform that includes the do-it-yourself Azure ML and Auto ML, and we'll also be talking about cognitive services, which is a prepackaged platform as a service from Microsoft. Uh, Before we go ahead, let me quickly talk about myself and my background. So I have about 2 decades of experience in technical leadership and various individual contributor roles. My technical expertise is in distributed systems, large-scale networks and data systems, IoT and machine learning AI. And I have worked at Akamai, Inmobi, HelpShift, and Zoomka across various sectors such as networking, developer tools, ad tech, e-commerce, CRM, media, and smart mobility. And I currently work as a CTO in residence in a global role at Microsoft for startups, right? So some of you have already interacted with me in the technical deep dives. Those of you who haven't will be interacting with me going forward. Yeah. So that's about me. So let's quickly move on to the foundation for AI. So if you look at artificial intelligence, there are three parts to it. Right? First is your data that you have. Basically, you can have your own data or the data that you get from your customers or the custom data set that you have. The second thing that you have is probably sometimes you can use open data sets that are provided by Microsoft or even other vendors, and you can blend those data into your data. The second thing is you require compute and be able to run inference both for both training and inference on the cloud, and that is where the Azure cloud comes into the picture. And the third thing that you have is you have models, either pre-built models as in cognitive services, or you can build your own models by using various algorithms and choosing your own features and eventually training and deploying your own models, right? So it could be across vision, speech, language, search, and so on and so forth, right? Um, a little bit about the research that backs some of these breakthroughs that we've had. In 2016, the object recognition has reached human parity, and eventually it has actually exceeded human parity as well. I mean, if you look at the latest blog post. At the same time, speech recognition also has human parity or in done better, and I will be talking and giving demos about that as well. Machine translation again in 2018 has reached human parity, right? So if you look at the different data sets that we use for benchmark across vision, speech, and language, we are actually doing better as an industry and as Microsoft, uh, to be able to beat the human cognition, right? And that is something that you can see. The most famous example is like GPT-3, which is by OpenAI, and it can be used to generate. Um, uh, it can be can used to generate code. It can be used to generate specific voices or text for interacting with humans. So it's a large language model, and it uses like something called as transfer learning. So all of the research and that has gone into it. These tools can be used very easily. So all of the AI that we're going to talk about is actually fueled by breakthrough research across the Microsoft labs across the world. So we have them in Redmond, New York, Montreal, New England, Cambridge in the UK, and in India we have it in Bangalore, and in China we have it in both Shanghai and Beijing, right? So you can see the level of breakthroughs that we've had across across each of them. So when we look at Microsoft's AI level, there are three axes that we look at. First is that the innovation should be meaningful. It should be able to empower people, especially people who are on the front lines or working in factories or or doing the daily work. People who may not understand a lot about technology, but it helps them nevertheless. And again, while we are doing all of this, we have to be inclusive, and we have to be accountable, and we have to be transparent. And that is done by the responsible AI framework. I'll be talking a little bit about responsible AI framework towards the end of the session. So, and what are the principles that we use to calibrate that? Moving on to the next slide, if you look, there are various industries that Microsoft is available in the cognitive services available, and it is affecting all parts of our lives, whether it is the stock market, whether it's automotive, whether it's e-commerce and shopping, whether it's factories, the government, consumer goods, education, energy, agriculture. I mean, it has a whole gamut of it runs a whole gamut of of our life. So quickly before we go on, I want to talk about how we can use AI, Internet of Things, and blockchain in enabling the manufacturing and the food security system. This is a customer that is based out of Switzerland, and how they're using AI to do industrial production of food, and they provide the tools for that. And once this is done, then I'll go into maybe more detail about the techniques and the tools that we use for doing that. Let me share this again. I think some people cannot hear the sound.
%70 of the world's water, 30% of the world's energy goes into the production of food. And at the same time, 30% of the food we produce is lost or wasted as it travels across the value chain. So we set this target to reduce energy consumption and waste by 30% in our customers' value chains. And digitalization is an enabler of that.
Bühler is a family-owned Swiss company, the world's leading supplier for solutions in the food processing industry. Bühler Insights is a cloud-based platform. Leveraging the power of IoT, machine learning, and AI, we're able to provide operational efficiencies, cost savings, and most importantly, better products than ever before.
Beneath the umbrella of the Bühler Insights platform, we have a portfolio of digital services. Our optical sorting technology uses sensors to take a snapshot of the grain. We split that image up into pixels and analyze each individual pixel. Image processing techniques and algorithms make the decision whether that pixel is good or bad. Then we can eject the defect. And all of this happens at industrial grade throughputs of 15 tons an hour.
Smartphone technology to analyze samples, and it enables our customers to make accurate measurements of the material running on their process line to maintain optimal efficiency. We use machine learning to aggregate activities from all of our social media channels to give our customers really early intelligence on a food safety outbreak in their sector.
Today, we're working on technologies like blockchain. We have problems with food authenticity, traceability. Consumers are demanding more transparency of the food value chain. And blockchain is an enabler to make this happen. Microsoft and Bühler have a common goal to make the world a better place. And it's this shared mission that truly bonds us in this journey together.
So now we have seen an example. So let's go a little bit behind the hood and look at three different ways. We'll look at AI apps and agents. We'll look at knowledge mining, and then we will look at building our own ML and deep learning solutions, right? So without further ado, let us do a deep dive into AI apps and agents. So let me first cover the cognitive services. So if you look at cognitive services, there are 5 different clusters that you would look at. You have decision sciences, which looks at, like, for example, personalizer. What personalizer does is it looks at your activity that has happened so far, and using reinforcement learning, it figures out, what is like the next action that you're likely to take, and actually either gives you recommendations or personalizes maybe the dashboard, or any kind of, like, for example, in e-commerce, it will e-commerce it will uh, uh, e-commerce it will actually tell you what are the recommended products, and so it will personalize the experience for you. There's If you're running a content moderator site, then what would happen is, if you're running a user generated content site, then you can moderate the content for swearing, for any kind of nudity, remove any kind of nudity or any kind of bad behavior. You can moderate the content, and anomaly detector will um, detector will find anomalies in the data that you have. And Then you have the vision services. I'll give a demo of this soon. There is Ink Recognizer, where you can recognize handwritten OCR, and you will be able to recognize handwritten documents. You have the form recognizer, where you have structured forms, and those forms are either typically printed, so you can read like invoices and other billing and other information. You have face recognition, where you can use for security. Then you have video indexer. So what video indexer does is it looks at the content of the video, identifies the people in the video, and it tells when are certain people available, in certain aspects. So let's say if there are 2 or 3 people talking, let's say in a movie or in a video or a presentation, it will identify when were each of those people talking, or if there is any kind of annotation that needs to be done on top of the audio, it can actually do both of that. So video indexer actually indexes the video based on the language and the speech that is there in the video, and it can also do it on visual cues as well, about like what is the scene, for example. And similarly, we have custom vision, where you can actually train the algorithm, as I said, like using your own images, and then the training data would actually learn, and then you can recognize the images. Like, for example, you can ask it to give it the images of, like, Pepsi cans, and then over a period of time it can recognize the Pepsi cans as it comes across. Then you have the language, and language is like the bedrock for many of the underlying tools that we have. For example, the bot maker, which is a tool that we use for generating bot across different channels. So it can understand different languages. So basically, let's say if you have certain utterances, what it will do is it will figure out what is the intent. Like, for example, let's say payments. You're taking payments in your app, and people can write, hey, I have an issue with payments, or I'm getting a certain error page. My payment is stuck. I'm not able to pay. So all of this means that there's some issue with the payment, possibly the payment gateway or the payment page. And what it will do is it will figure out the proper FAQ, or suggest the right channel, so that the right person or the right help can be given to the user. Just give me a second. Right. And Before we go on to then there's text analysis, which I will be giving a demo. So before you go on to the next one, I just wanted to make a suggestion that if you can tweet with the hashtags that are provided in the chat windows, and if you can tag me, that would really help to reach a larger audience, because we'll be publishing this video for consumption for people who could not attend the video, and for future startups that come into the program as well. So thank you for tweeting. Moving on to the next, we have speech. We have the conversation transcription capability, and we have custom transcription. What custom transcription does is you can add to the vocabulary based on the context in which it is based. Let's say you are working in a hospital and you want to see the...
Your screen is dark. Could you reshare it, please? Thanks.
Okay. Can you see it all right now? Okay, Kabir, can you see the screen all right now?
Yes. Yes. Thanks. Sorry.
Okay. Custom transcription can add the context. For example, if you're in healthcare, all the medical words can be understood, or if you are in travel, and I'll give you an example of that. All those words can be understood that are specific to travel. And the speech to text and natural neural speech, text to speech is so natural that it's very hard to distinguish. And I'll give a example of that going forward. And the last one is the web search, where you can add what is available on the web, as well as you have your own corpus, which you can search. And when I mean the own corpus is, like, for example, if you're indexing legal documents, or if you're indexing financial transactions, all of them can be cross-indexed and be available to search based on a variety of parameters that you use for search, right? So custom search is really useful for that. And as I said, on the web as well, you have news search, web search, image search, visual search, and local business search. All of these can be used to augment what you already have. Similarly, auto suggest can be used for suggesting what is the completion, right? So just to give an example, let me talk about the Q&A for human parity. What this particular slide is showing is that you have a paragraph like Jessica went to sit in a rocking chair. Today was a birthday and she was turning 80. Her granddaughter Annie was coming over in the afternoon, and Jessica was very excited to see her. Her daughter Melanie and Melanie's husband Josh were coming as well. Jessica had. So this is a conversation, and then what the Q&A maker has done is it has understood what is there in the text, and then you can see the examples of what are the different questions that can be asked, and it's able to answer the question, and it's also telling you a reference from which it has figured out what is the answer to the question, right? So like, for example, who had a birthday? So you know that Jessica had a birthday, right? So you have a good amount of understanding based on this. So let's move on to vision right now, or maybe let's quickly do a demo. Let me share my demo screen. So you can go to this site, aidemos.microsoft.com, and now I'm going to show you a text analytics demo. So let me quickly go there. So I have in the text analytics demo I have a short pre-filled paragraph, and what I'm going to do is now I'm going to analyze this paragraph and see how that works. So let's look at the tone and
it seems to be stuck again. I'm just going to refresh the bot's connection. Audience,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Please bear with us for 2 minutes. We're having some technical difficulties.
relevant information for each entity.
You'll have to repeat that, Vinayak.
Yeah, Kabir, tell me.
If the bot has come back, Vaishak.
The bot is back for recording.
Yes, it's
So I need to
working.
check.
You'll have to repeat what you just said.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I was just talking about the text analytics demo. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes, Vinayak.
Should I reshare?
No, we can see it. The text analytics screen. I see it.
Yeah. So I was just talking about text analytics and explaining how it works. So basically, let's go to the next step, and it has already like told figured out the entity. Saturn is the entity. It's a planet, part of solar system. Jupiter is another planet. It's a gas giant. It has figured out average radius is about 9 times of Earth. The sentiment is neither negative nor positive. It's neutral. Let's go to the next step. What it has done is it has found out all of these entities that we figured out, and it has linked to each of them to Wikipedia. And then you can click on each of these links and go to Wikipedia. If you go to the next step, what it will do is it will pull out all of this data from Wikipedia, and it is actually showing that in the form of a card. Right. So basically, I gave it a small phrase, and it has figured out what are the entities from this phrase. It has figured out the sentiment. It has linked those entities, and now it's providing that information as cards. Right. So this is one example. Let me go back to the presentation. So what image process, what Vision does is that it uses image processing to classify what is there in the scene. So if you can see in the GIF, it is showing a person crossing the road, and it's able to figure out that there's a building, there's a road, there's a taxi, there's a person who is walking. and it's able to caption, identify, and moderate that image. So going back to the demo, I can show you a demo where you can see this and annotate text. Again, going back to computer vision. So let's go and choose an image. So I'm choosing the image of the car. Probably it looks like somewhere in New York City. So it is saying, hey, it's showing different tags, such as it has 100% confidence that there's a building in the scene. It has 100% confidence there's a car in the scene. It knows that it's outdoor. It probably looks at it's at a curb and that it has a lower confidence for that. It's saying it can see a sidewalk, but it's again has lower confidence for that. So basically, it is identifying the objects in the image and then it's able to tell what is the confidence level that it is able to see that image. So basically, what you can do is whenever you run any kind of cognitive services, you can actually have a threshold beyond which you can show it, and then either have human intervention or decide not to show it, right? So you can use this confidence level to actually annotate your data. Similarly, it's also showing a description saying that it's a car parked on a city street, right? And also it says that it has 99% and 100% confidence that there is no racy content or any adult content there. So let's go to the next step which is are we able to identify the text in the imagery? So again, let's select a particular text. Let's select this street scene. So it is able to figure out that there's Matt. If you look at the image, it's very hard to figure out. There's Matt in the scene right on this building. It's saying E22nd Street, 26th Street, Herman Melville Square, and it's also figured out that there's a one-way sign there, right? Now let's look at ink recognizer, which is like OCR technology, and let's look at handwritten piece. So if you go and click on one of the images, it has figured out that it is steel cut oats with apricots, cranberries and spices, and served with milk and yogurt, and the cost is $4.50. Similarly, what it can do is you can actually recognize landmarks. For example, if I click on the Statue of Liberty, it's saying 95% confidence that it's the Statue of Liberty. Let's also click on a celebrity. Again, this is the CEO of Microsoft. You say it is Satya Nadella with 100% confidence. So basically, you can see that this is actually all done using cognitive services. Right. So let me go back to the presentation. So I talked about custom vision, right? What custom vision does is, if you go to customvision.ai, you can upload your own labeled images, and you can use custom vision using this technique, as I said earlier, called transfer learning, to quickly add tags to any unlabeled images. Then you basically can use the UI to train your images and make sure that those labels are understood. And what it does is, once all of this is done, the model is trained, you want to do inference, right? So then it gives you an API similar to what you have with cognitive services to use that API to form your own custom vision model. Similarly, there's face detection. It can detect multiple faces. It can detect similar faces, and it can tag previously identified people in the images. It can organize the images into group based on the similarity of the image. Let's say it's a group picture or a
sorry, I think you've got a screen sharing issue again.
Okay. Let me try resharing. Uh, can you see the slides now? Kabir, can you see the slides now?
Yes. Yeah, it's sharing now.
Okay.
It could be a bandwidth issue. Turn off your video, please.
I doubt it's a bandwidth issue, but
No,
so I'm playing a
it's
video now. Can you see the video?
stuck.
Can you see the video or no?
No, we're not able to see it on Event Builder.
Okay, let me try resharing it. I'll turn off my video. Let's see if that improves the situation. Um, just let me know if you can see the video that I'm sharing. Kabir, are you able to see the videos?
Yes, Mike. Now it seems to be sharing. Yes.
So I'm sharing the next slide. Can you see the form recognizer, the different forms that I have now? Cool. Yeah, so basically now what you can do with form recognizers is you can take invoice and receipts, you can take application forms, you can take survey forms, any kind of paper forms that are in structured format. And you can take this different kinds of form and then you can convert them into, into text. I had a demo for this, but we are running a little bit behind in time. But what you can do is you can go to the URL that I shared, and you can see the demo there. Basically, um, you can upload this form, and you should be able to see um, the next also. So basically, form recognizer, what it does is it takes a form and then it can extract the fields and then it can put it in a format that can be understood. You can also extract tables from forms um, very easily. Moving on to speech services, everything good so far, Kabir? Or you're still having sharing issue?
No, Vinayaka, it's not sharing your screen.
Okay, it's showing me that it's shared. Okay, let me try that. I don't know if it's because it's a multi screen setup, but last webinar actually it worked pretty well. So let me try sharing just my laptop screen. Just give me a second. Can you see my screen now? You should be seeing speech services, speech to text, text to speech translation, speaker verification, and identification.
Yeah, we're seeing that. We're seeing that right now.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So let me just share it with sound again because I have a couple of videos.
Well, you can see here.
So this is a video.
What you can see here, this is a common office meeting room, but this one's different. On the desk, we have a prototype device that picks up both audio and video that we can couple with AI services in Microsoft 365 to help with key tasks like identification, voice transcription, and even real-time translation. So let's go ahead and get started. Dave, what's the latest with the smart building pilot?
I've already done some preliminary analysis on the data, but I'm finding some high temperature outliers. Let's discuss it later in the meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Dave, do we have enough of the Yanzi multi-sensors to update the showcase floor?
Actually, I have some concerns about the placement of those showcase sensors, and we should hold off on a one-to-one replacement until I can...
I'm really sorry to interrupt, Dave, but I have some ideas about the replacement, so maybe let's connect after the meeting.
That's good to know. I'll follow up with my team, and I'll post an update to our channel after the meeting.
And I'll take the action to send Yanzi an email about those showcase sensors.
Okay, great.
Now, take a look at the transcript behind me on the left. Even though we were all speaking over each other, the AI services coupled with the audio and video signals from the device could still accurately identify who was speaking and when. You'll also notice that it picked up our meeting items and listed them on the right. And the voice recognition model has been trained over time to understand our team's unique communication style and recognize.
So what I'll do is I'll share the presentation. It seems that we are having some issues with the video sharing. I'm not sure why, because we have done this in the past very successfully. But I'll skip the videos for now. But basically what that demo showed is there were people talking in the room, and it was automatically getting recognized that who was talking. It was doing a summary, as well as it was translating into different languages, right? So basically that brings you to the next thing in the pipeline, which is like acoustic customization. So basically you can cancel out noise conditions, accents, age groups. You can do some amount of language customizations as well. You can add vocabulary, terminology, pronunciation as well, so that you can improve the efficiency of the speech recognition system.
Show me all flights from Pittsburgh to Boston, both direct and connecting, that depart Pittsburgh after 7 p.m.
Yeah, so as you can see, it is able to detect what is the context very easily. Context very easily, like it can baseline speech recognition and custom speech recognition. So that clip I played, it is showing that what are the differences between the baseline speech recognition and what is recognized once you train it, after a while. So there are 60 plus languages that can be used. So we can use speech, then you can do automatic speech recognition. You can then do machine translation and then do text to speech again, right? So basically it does pretty much real-time translation into different languages pretty easily. The speech synthesis is very near human parity, and it is also does joint optimization of the pronunciation prosody plus high fidelity audio generation, and it has learned from large data sets across different speakers. You can see the difference between neural text to speech and traditional text to speech in the diagram. Okay, so now I'm going to play two clips, and you have to kind of guess which one is artificial. So as the name suggests, the first one is the clip that I'm going to play now.
As the name suggests, the original submarines came from Yugoslavia.
And now I'm going to play the second one.
This is easy enough if you have an unfinished attic directly above the bathroom.
Now, can you guess which one is artificial and which one is computer generated? I'll give you give a couple of seconds to think about it. I can play it again.
As the name suggests, the original submarines came from Yugoslavia.
This is the first one.
This is easy enough if you have an unfinished attic directly above the bathroom.
Okay. Okay, so I hope you have made your choices, and I'll tell the answer now. It's the first one, right? So as you see, it's very hard to recognize which is the artificial one and which is the computer generated, which is the artificial one and which is the human speech very easily. So let's move on to the next part, which is the knowledge mining. So basically, Azure Search, what it can do, it can uncover latent insights from all your content. So it can take in different kinds of files like, tagged image file format, TIFF, doc, PDF, JPEGs, HTML documents, PPTs, so on and so forth. And it can basically allow you to search for certain keywords or certain concepts also from each of those as well. Just to give you an example, I'm taking an example of a resume. So if let's say you ingest data from different resumes, and what it does is it can do language detection, it can do face detection, it can recognize which is the organization, it can do entity extraction from that, it can do location entity extraction, it can do key phrase extraction. For example, key phrase extraction examples could be your particular skill set, like say digital marketing or certain programming languages, or if you are experiencing certain kinds of sales, for example, channel sales. So it figures out, what are the different entities and extracts the key phrases as we saw. And then it creates a structure that you can easily query and store either as in a structured format or a semi-structured format. And then, you can actually extract it using like similar sounding words or using certain concepts. For example, it understands that, if you search for, people who have which have expertise in say Java or C++. So it understands that Java and C++ are both programming languages, and it will show you people who have experience in this aspect. And it will also, you can also say, hey, I want people with experience of more than 4 years, and it will show you that as well. So it's fairly sophisticated. So it understands the different entities and also the relationship between different entities. So I'm going to play another video. So let me know if this is working. If not, I'll just skip this. But what the video shows is you can it's a museum, the Met in New York, and it's actually the Met in New York has used our technology to be able to augment the collection, where people can actually not only find artwork or artifacts from a certain era or a certain painting style, but it can also figure out what is the relationship between different paintings, what are the objects that are shown in the painting, are there any celebrities in those objects. With that, I'll just play the video.
The Met is not just a place that you visit, but it's really a great service to an audience all around the world.
The Met receives 7 million visitors through its doors annually. However, we're interested in reaching the 3.9 billion internet-connected people all around the globe. The Met's Open Access Collection seeks to make the collection the most accessible, discoverable, and useful on the internet.
There's a lot that goes into creating a work of art. There's information about the artist, what was the artist inspired by, why was an object created. So all that information, all that data about an artwork really helps you to get a fuller picture about why it was made.
Our collection spans 5,000 years. We have art from every culture. So just the sheer size of our collection makes it difficult to work with. Subject keyword tags enable us to find connections and patterns across eras, across artistic movements.
Now we're doing work with AI, projects like using tags with cognitive search.
Now that we can leverage cognitive search, we'll be able to tag the whole collection at a much quicker pace.
It's been very exciting to see visually similar artworks and tag prediction.
through AI, we can see things that we didn't have the possibility to see with our naked eye. There are patterns, there's information that are discoverable, connecting art from one piece to the other. We're really able to understand things that we couldn't possibly have dreamed of.
Cool. I guess that some of you are having issues with the video. So, but don't worry. What I'll do is I'll share the presentation where you can download this and see the videos. So I'll skip through the videos. I'm not sure why this is happening because some of you are able to see the videos and some aren't. So let me move on to machine learning, where you can use machine learning on Azure. So you can use the domain-specific pre-trained models, vision, speech, language, web search, decision, which we already seen. There are also data science tools, Visual Studio, Azure Notebooks, Jupyter, and you can use the command line as well. There are also popular frameworks that we have first-class support for PyTorch, Scikit-learn, TensorFlow, and we also have access to ONNX. In the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about ONNX in detail. You also have Azure Machine Learning service that you can use to automate your machine learning operations. Azure Databricks, basically Spark and Spark ML that you can use for training and running your queries or running inference on your dataset. And you have machine learning VMs that are VMs that have all of the libraries attached along with the GPU or CPU for training. Similarly, you can to accelerate or train your model. You can use the CPU or GPU, CPU or GPU, or FPGA for inference. So I said, like, a little bit about ONNX is you can use your popular deep learning frameworks, PyTorch, TensorFlow, Scikit-learn, MXNet, Chainer or Keras. And then what you do is, without getting locked into one framework, you can use ONNX, which is Open Neural Network Exchange, which is a community project started by Microsoft and Facebook, and use the best tool for the job, train in one framework, and then transfer it to another for inference. So it basically works like a JVM, just like the JVM has different languages that target it, like Java, Kotlin, or Scala. You can use a language of your choice, but as long as the JVM or the runtime is supported, ONNX runtime is supported, you can use it on a container, on a mobile, on the private cloud, on public cloud, any custom hardware that you have as well, and it works beautifully, right? So you don't need to be locked into a framework or language. You can use whatever is the best tool, the best framework, and then use something else for inference. So basically, as I said, what it frees you is that the cognitive services allows you using cognitive service containers to actually deploy where your data resides. So it could be any IoT hardware, or it could be a distributed data center with intermittent connectivity to the cloud. So all of this is absolutely possible, and the link at the bottom actually tells you how to use the intelligent edge and the intelligent cloud. So it spans the entire spectrum. Yeah, this is one slide where it says it helps the complete end-to-end scenario from code repository, build and test using a model container which contains a model for inference. You can deploy it, and then you can monitor and analyze very easily. This next slide talks about ML ops, where multiple different people, let's say the app developer, can collaborate with the data scientist and on GitHub. And as you know, in a data science workflow, you have multiple different things. You have code, you have data, you have models. The code is used to build a model, and for that you require data. But once the model is built, you need to validate the model, make sure that certain thresholds are met in terms of efficiency, in terms of accuracy, in terms of prediction, as well as in terms of latency and uptime requirements, right? So the developers and data scientists can collaborate on GitHub. Then they can build the app, Once they build the app, they can train the model, they can validate the model using cross validation. Typically what you do is you take 80% of the data to train, and then you check the inference on 20%, and then you kind of iterate to it until you are satisfied with the performance of the model. Finally, once you are ready, you can release the app and deploy the model. And once you deploy it, you monitor it for two things. First thing is you monitor for the efficacy and of the model, and second thing is you monitor it for the efficiency of serving, right? So what I mean by efficacy of the model is like, in the real world, what are the, let's say it's a custom vision model, right? What is the rate at which it can identify both false positives, false negatives, as well as accuracy, area under the curve. These are typically measures that you would use to measure the efficacy of the model. At the same time, it should do this at scale. So you might want to monitor the throughput, you might want to monitor the latency of it be able to do that, right? And because as you build your product, you will have more data, you will understand more about the domain, and you will come across better algorithms. All three of them will have an impact on the model. So basically, you will have to retrain the model, and you iterate over this process until you get better and better. And as I said, as you've seen, even in Microsoft, you will tend to be either reach or beat human efficiency there. So what this does is MLOps gives you a framework for reproducing the model, validating the model, deploying the model, and the most important thing is, while all the first three are possible, it allows you to retrain the model and redeploy, right? Because unlike normal deployments, which are very deterministic, if you know you do ABC, you get D. That's not the case with machine learning, right? You have to constantly improve it. It works on typically works on probabilistic or statistical models. Another important factor is AutoML, so automated machine learning. So automated machine learning is really useful if you want to test a feature or test a hypothesis very fast without sinking a lot of resources into it. So maybe you don't have a data scientist team, or you have a data scientist team, but they're engaged in slightly more higher priority stuff. You can actually use this. And what we have seen is actually in many cases, it can actually beat data scientists as well, just because of the number of iterations that it can do compared to humans, right? The sheer amount of discoverability that is there in terms of feature engineering. Second thing is that it can do better in many cases with algorithm selection. And finally, once it has selected the features and the algorithm, it can tune the parameters also really well, right? So it takes in three inputs: the data set, the target metric, and the constraints and the cost. The second thing it does once you have given all these three is just feature engineering, selects the features, generates the features. Then it selects a series of algorithms which are best suited for the problem. And once those are chosen, then it tunes the parameters so that you can train the model. And once the model is trained, then it ranks the model on the basis of the target metric and the constraints and the cost that you've given it. And then based on the metrics, you can choose the model and deploy it, right? So basically, it takes the process of automating or time-consuming and iterative process of machine learning and away, and it allows the data scientists, analysts, and developers to build machine learning models with high-scale efficiency and productivity while sustaining model quality, right? And it actually frees their time for actually learning more about the domain, learning more about the algorithms, or trying out new features which computers cannot maybe easily do. So typical use cases are like, for classification. Again, these are links, and once I share, you can take a look at that. So AutoML, some of the use cases are like, for classification, you can do fraud detection, marketing predictions, nudes data, any kind of data classification can be done. Similarly, it works really well for time series forecasting, whether it's demand forecasting, sales forecasting, any kind of supply forecasting, inventory prediction. So these kind of this kind of problems it is able to solve easily using time series forecasting. When it comes to regression, you can use it for example, the CPU performance, right? Let's say you're building a new CPU or you are building a new app and you want to know what is the performance of that app. Based on prior tests, it can actually predict, what would be the performance of the CPU. So it basically uses logistical regression to predict that. So these are some of the links that you can use. Cool. So basically, now we have talked about cognitive services, which is PaaS. We have talked about Azure ML, which is like do it yourself, and we also talked about ONNX, where you can use like third-party libraries or other frameworks such as PyTorch, Keras, TensorFlow. But I think importantly, you need to understand that whenever you're building products for humans, you need to be able to take care of the privacy. You need to secure the data, and you should do it in an ethical way, right? For example, if you're giving loans in a fintech industry, right, you should make sure that certain sections of populations are not disadvantaged, right? So what is the framework around that? So we have a framework around this. For example, you have responsible AI, which is our framework that we use. It takes into account fairness, reliability, inclusivity, privacy of the people whose data it is used, and transparency about how the decision was reached. So it tells you the structure or the inference process, and then there is accountability, right? Accountability says that, hey, whenever I have taken this decision or made this recommendation, this is how we came to that conclusion, and these are all the different buckets in which the decision parameters can be sliced and diced. I had a good video, but I don't know whether it would work. So let me try playing that, and hopefully it works. Basically, this talks about AI for accessibility.
We have so many pupils who are non-verbal, but still have so much to say.
I want the exact same information that my hearing friends have.
There are barriers to communication everywhere, but I think it's time we look at the barriers as opportunities to reach out to everyone.
Soundscape fills in a lot of the mental map as you move.
Approaching intersection.
You can just put it in your pocket and go.
With ALS, you become locked in. But we see technology as a way to give back what ALS has taken away.
There's no better feeling than to hear a child say something that they've wanted to say and the look on their face after they've been able to say it.
When it's reading, I see spaces between the words, and it's easy to focus on.
Anjay realized that here was something that could change his life.
Now that I have my phone, I can see exactly what was said, and that's been a huge help to me.
The system is learning as it goes, and the accuracy has improved tremendously.
Students can pick any language that they choose to receive the information. It's like we jumped into the future.
Because communication is very important for all of us, and we just want to be together and not feel left out.
Aider les personnes avec autisme à communiquer, il y a des images.
Je parle, je donne une information à Arthur et elle est traduite par l'application Elpicto instantanément en pictogramme et après d'une façon orale.
Va t'habiller et te brosser les dents.
On va pouvoir remettre en place une...
So with that, I'm ending my presentation. So you can see some of the information about the AI platform. There is the AI school, which has different kinds of trainings that you can take, and the demos website, which I used to see the cognitive services. So you can take a look at these links, and if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to take those questions. So over to you, Kabir. I'll stop sharing my screen and turn my video on. If you have any questions, you can put the questions in the chat box, and then I will be happy to answer them. So I'll wait for a minute or so. Yes, so Johan Tagel says, hope you can schedule the IoT webinar with examples for IoT and ML. Yes, we are planning a webinar for IoT plus ML. Mostly in IoT, you tend to look at time series data, and time series data can be typically you use either regression or in any of the forecasting kind of approaches, and that works really well. So yeah, so those are the typical use cases. The other thing that you would see in time series forecasting, especially in IoT, is to do anomaly detections. Like for example, if you see spikes, if you're measuring maybe say industrial output, or if you're measuring the weather or any other external event, you want to know what are the outliers. Right. So basically, that is also one of the big use cases for IoT and machine learning. Yeah. So if you have any questions, please paste them in the chat. So we are a little over time, so I'll wait for a minute, or we can. If there are no more further questions, we can stop and then I'll share the presentation. I'm really sorry for the technical issues we had. Unfortunately, we did check before the webinar, but everything was working well. And in fact, we did the earlier webinar in the series. We never had any issues so far. So yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thanks Vinayak for your time. Like Vinayak said, we're really sorry about all the technical issues. We'll have those all sorted out before our next webinar for sure. Even this one, like Vinayak said, these issues happen despite the testing. So really very, very sorry about that.
Cool. So hope to interact with all of you in the technical deep dive, and then we can go into specific use cases. So I hope this was both the earlier presentation on Azure overview, as well as this was useful in getting a good understanding of what is possible. And then we can dig into each of the specific problems, whether it is IoT, whether it is specific industry related, such as retail, healthcare, finance, or agriculture. We can actually go do a deep dive into that. So thanks everyone for your time, and we will unfortunately, since you could see the videos, what I'll do is I'll put up the presentation for upload, so you can click on the links as well as see the videos, and also I hope that you should be able to check out the demos also through the links that I have shared using aidemos.microsoft.com. So thank you everyone. Hope you all have a good day. Bye.